Hi, I'm Bhavna Barthoff, the US Transformation Leader for Microsoft US. Excited to be here and honored to be the host of our all-star keynote panel focused on 5 new trends for customer experience leaders to know to really prepare for 2021. So as we plan for winning customer strategies for 2021, it's critical for customer experience leaders to understand the rapidly changing technology development, new trends, and how customers are behaving differently due to the ongoing pandemic. I'm excited to bring together this panel of experts to really help us capture insights and learn from our industry leaders. And so with that, I'd like to welcome our panel to this discussion, and I'd like each of them to introduce themselves and just tell us a little bit about themselves. And then I have one question for every single person. Where would you like to travel when we're out of this pandemic? And so with that, Emma, if I could have you go ahead first.
Hi, my name is Emma Rose. I'm Senior Director of Customer Success at Clarabridge. Very excited to be here. I think, we've always known we've worked in an exciting space of CX, but I think never more so than now, certainly over the last year with all the growth and changes we've seen. So where would I like to go after the pandemic? Well, actually just 2 hours north of here, just 2 hours north of London to go and visit my family who I've not seen for a very long time. So that's where I would like to go.
Sounds good. Thank you, Emma. Sam?
Hi, I'm Sam Richardson. I'm Senior Visioneering Consultant at Twilio Foundry. Echoing much of what Emma said, really. Really excited to be here because it feels like last year has kind of really propelled customer experience to the forefront of everybody's minds. So very, very excited to be on this panel with all these great participants. Where would I like to go? Now, I onboarded at Twilio remotely, so I guess I should say San Francisco to meet everybody, but really I'd like to go to Paris first.
Sounds good. Thanks, Sam. Julian?
Well, hi there, Julian Rio. I'm the Senior Marketing Director for RingCentral, and definitely able to welcome Sam to our beautiful city of Paris, where I'm currently based. I'm a certified customer experience professional, so it's really my passion to talk about CX. I actually launched this year the CX Therapy, which is a series of videos where with a friend, we hop on a therapy couch to talk about bad customer experiences, and that's where I spent a lot of time recently. But my next travel journey is probably going to be Hong Kong. I spent 10 years there when I was younger, and it has been too long I have not visited the city.
Awesome. Thanks, Julian. Niall?
Hi, Neil Gallagher. Delighted to be here today. Excited to hear everything that's going on at the conference. I work for Calabrio as a strategic consultant looking after business intelligence, and I have traditionally traveled the world giving advice to customers. But for the last 12 months almost, I've been stationary and home. And I'm just desperate to go and spend more time with customers. I don't mind where they are. I'd love them to be in somewhere that's also close to mountains. I'm delighted in the outdoors. So either in the Scottish Highlands where I'm based, or I'd love to get into the Alps in Central Europe. So I'll travel through Paris to get to the French Alps, or the Swiss Alps is where I'd probably love to be, especially in the ski season. But sadly, the ski season is also shut down for the whole of 2021 as well. So that's out of the order, I'm afraid. But yeah, really excited to help drive value for our customers from data and analytics.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Niall, and welcome to the rest of the panel as well. I will come with you guys on your trips wherever you're choosing to go, since you also pick some lovely places. All right, so to get started, I'm going to start with a question. As we think about what the pandemic has done regarding digital transformation, it's forced every company, whether they've liked it or not, to truly go through transformation. And I read in a recent Wall Street Journal interview that COVID-19 has actually acted like a time machine where it's brought 2030 to 2020. And so when we look at it from that perspective, a lot of our, as a customer experience leader, people are trying to figure out where should they start, because every company is going through so much change and transformation. And so what advice would you give them? Sam, if you'd be open to kicking us off there.
Yeah, I think my advice would be go to that raw data, go to your customers, reacquaint yourself with your customers, do a great body of research, because everybody's needs have changed, everybody's behaviors have changed. And I think if we're applying some of the same customer insight that we had before 2020 to now, then you're just going to miss a trick. You really need to invest in reacquainting yourself, getting to know your customers again, and knowing what their needs are.
Thank you, Sam. Julian, would you like to add anything to this?
Sure. So first, I think I'm going to be very much aligned with Sam. So it's a good place to start. I think you need to start with mapping, understanding the new journey mapping, the new journeys of your customers, because things have changed, obviously. Probably don't try to boil the ocean, because you can't do everything. And where I would actually start is probably around customer engagement, because you need to rebuild that connection with your customers, and for two reasons. First, because it's vital to make sure that they are loyal, they understand your brand and they connect with you. But also because all that data that Sam was talking about earlier, you're going to get a lot of it by engaging with your customers, understanding their pain points, where they are, what are the new expectations and habits, and that's going to help you build the rest of your customer experience and customer journey. So that's probably where I'd start.
And Julian, if I could just stay with you for a second, when you did your introduction, you talked a little bit about kind of the therapy couch, where you talked about bad customer experiences. Are there common themes that you have seen that would be good for this audience to be aware of based on that data, as you talked about where we needed to start?
Well, I think many companies, you talked about digital transformation. Many companies have tried to go full speed into digital transformation, because unfortunately they did not do it early enough. And many of them have had to do it in a rush and did probably not do it the right way. So you build a new website, but you can't answer your emails, or you suddenly want to communicate on Facebook, but you can't respond to customer inquiry on that platform, or you're available for orders on Messenger, but you can't respond to customer inquiries or help with delivery. So there are so many small points that when you go too fast into digital transformation, you might miss. And I think that's a common trend, and that does make sense when you do things too fast without proper planning. Now, I see that improving months over months, because people have had time to study what goes wrong and talk with their customers and understand it better. But there's still some way to go for many companies.
Sounds good. Thanks, Julian, and thank you, Sam, as well. When we look at the future ahead, we can't afford to ignore the fact that everyone needs technology to really drive innovation and to help you accelerate it. And especially with the fourth industrial revolution being digital transformation, that's become core and central to everything we all do. And so when we think about the continued investment of customers moving to the cloud, more and more bots being available, and obviously the importance of AI in today's world and market, I'd be curious to hear from you all on what thoughts would you like to share around how your customer experience leaders really need to engage with technology to help their customers really drive innovation. Emma, if you could help us kick off here.
Sure, absolutely. And I think sort of to tie in with what Julian was just saying, I think it's sometimes you can go a bit too fast, and actually just doing something and making a good start is fine. You don't need to go racing ahead. You can just start with small steps. So if I think about, many of our customers, have chatbots on, on Messenger, on various different platforms and what have you. Others don't. They use within our technology, within Clarabridge, we have a flow-based bot, which you can kind of build up with fairly sort of low effort. So people are sort of dipping their toes into various different levels. But I think either way, the idea really is just to make sure that you're using the technology in the smartest way. So to get rid of all kind of the, the mundane sort of tasks, like, it could be, gathering initial information from the customer or going through an authorization process, and then leaving all of the real value add tasks, to the actual human agent. So it's really about getting that balance between, making the, the agent, really fulfill the job to the best of their ability on the value add tasks, and leaving the technology to do the rest.
Good, thanks, Emma. Niall?
Yeah, so one of the things we've seen at Calabrio is a rapid acceleration and adoption of cloud. Many contact centers have taken cloud first as their strategy to help them deal with the flexibility required during the pandemic. And many of these organizations are going to continue to expand and extend their use of cloud going forward. And it's not just about hosting in the cloud, perhaps even extending out and deploying greater and wider integration of multiple services to drive customer experience. And as Emma was talking around bots, etc., what we're starting to see is the adoption and acceptance of bots as being much more natural instead of being an isolated element, becoming much more natural elements, whether you're talking about things such as Cortana from Microsoft or Alexa or Siri from different vendors. Each of these, from a consumer perspective, is adopting and accepting their use from those. And we're also seeing artificial intelligence and machine learning. And one of the challenges that, having been a data scientist for a number of years myself, one of the challenges we have is looking at things traditionally as time series. We can't look back on 2020 and use it to try and predict what's going to happen next week, let alone next month, because last year was so different. So we need to be a little bit careful about how we use and apply machine learning, taking data from the last 12 months, but there's a lot we can do around building appropriate scenarios. And one thing I would say is the change in technology. We've seen consumers accept rapid change. And a big thank you to Microsoft for anyone who's got children or that's teachers, big thank you, because we've all been using Microsoft Teams for schools. It's been systemic right across Europe. So a big thank you from that perspective as well. It's been a big benefit to everybody. And the consumers are loving the fact that they've now got digital capabilities.
Thank you, Niall, and I appreciate you kind of giving us a shout out, because that's much appreciated. And I'm with you. I think it's amazing to see in such a short period of time how everyone has acclimated, whether they've wanted to or not, to technology, and how much collaboration and connection platforms have played a critical, point in time for us. If you think about the situation happening 10 years before, where it hit, it would have been a very different world for us to be able to navigate and enable, like you said, our kids going to school, having that experience and continuing their learning in this remote setting. So thank you for calling that out. As I kind of hit on something that the two of you said, I want to just double click a little bit more on data. We've talked a lot about data, and at Microsoft, we really are calling it the year of data right now, purely because it has become critical and foundational for every company, regardless of their industry, to figure out how do they plan for the future. And as you just said, data from prior to the last 12 months doesn't help us in this current state and market that we're in. And so how do we think about it from the point of view of analytics, and what would you recommend to our customer experience leaders on how do we really agitate on the use of technology and really have folks think about it in enabling their ability to accelerate their innovation?
Is that to myself? Sorry, Vanna.
Yeah, go ahead, Niall. If you'd like to take it first, great. Yeah.
Yeah, so what I've seen is traditional self-service BI and guided analytics have been around for a few years now, and contact centers and customer experience professionals have been adopting those at some considerable pace over the last 5 years or so. What we're starting to see is they're bringing in more advanced analytics, predictive analytics. And for most organizations that want to get value, we need to start looking forward as well. Many organizations have got phenomenal amounts of data in their contact center. And I'm starting to see many organizations turn that around. Instead of it being backwards looking at just what did we do last week, being able to use more predictive techniques, being able to use more human behavioral capabilities to engage staff, so that they start looking forward and being able to make better informed decisions about what to do next, rather than what did we do last week, for example. And what we're starting to see is I'm working with a number of companies that are investing in the data literacy. So back to your point about 2021 being the year of data, being able to build that data literacy across their own enterprise, building people's capabilities from that perspective, so they're better able to manipulate, handle, but also be able to argue with data to make important and informed decisions. I'm seeing a lot of that happening as we move forward for 2021 in a number of organizations investing very heavily. And in the cloud, they're able to do this at size and scale. Just as you talked about the classroom, we're talking about millions of people suddenly being able to access technology at a substantial scale across a whole continent or continents. So very powerful.
Thanks. Now, Emma, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, to Niall's point, there's just it's about sort of looking across the organisation, seeing all the data you have. I mean, we focus specifically on customer feedback. So within our Clarabridge platform, we use natural language processing to really just enrich and sort of add markers to that data around, what is the customer emotion, the sentiment, the intensity of that emotion, to really then analyse the conversation, the interaction that goes between the agent and the customer. How does the customer react to the way the agent is dealing with them, and vice versa. So, I think sort of to take that a step further, the way to sort of really go with that is to really look at, how can that help us in real time. So as you said, it's one thing to look back, but another thing to just look at how that could improve going forward. For example, could you give the agent some particular, guidance based on the conversation ongoing? Could you save the agent sort of time from picking out sort of reason codes by analysing that conversation and actually fulfilling, that kind of information for them? So, as I say, analysing the data, but then also just thinking about how we can make that a bit more real time going forward.
Sounds good. Thank you all. And it's great, right? So as we kind of, I think Niall touched on this a little bit, right? Around when we think about technology enablement, our virtual contact center is going to be critical for companies. I don't know, Julian, if this is something that you could kind of help us, if you can help answer that.
Yeah, well, I think that's really going to be a mix. Obviously today, because of the pandemic, everything is turning into virtual. If I'm looking at tomorrow, I don't think we'll ever go back to what we had before, but whatever tomorrow's world is going to look like, I feel is going to be hybrid for every team across the company, and even more for contact centers. Typical contact centers are like petri dishes where you have someone sick, everyone is getting sick because you don't have like a large office with 5 square meters around you. Typically, people are packed in a room because you need productivity, you need efficiency, and you have a constant buzz around yourself. Now, because of the whole COVID situation, now we're used to working from home and having more and more digital assistant, chatbots, and AI around it. Tomorrow, I feel like the world is going to be really hybrid. And chatbots are going to be an incredibly important part of that. But they're going to have to work hand in hand with humans that are going to work sometimes in a new type of contact center, sometimes working from home, because now we have this ability. And all this new platform, all this new tech that we now have is able to distribute messages automatically to the right agent. And as Emma was saying, understand the context, understand the message, understand the purpose of each request, so that you can always distribute it efficiently. At RingCentral, what we see is that across Asia, across Europe, across the US, more and more companies are now moving their agents to work from home, because you don't need much hardware anymore. You need, if you do voice, maybe a good headset, a nice computer, a Wi-Fi connection, and you're good to go. And I think that's pretty much what's going to happen in the future world that we are building together.
Agree, Julian. Thank you for that. Is there anyone else that wanted to provide any additional comments on that one? All right. Go ahead, Niall.
I was just going to say quite briefly, we are seeing from a workforce management perspective, we're seeing a huge amount of self-service from employees, flexing the shift pattern, adjustability and agility and flexibility, just to be able to satisfy customers and meet the demands. And they're referring to a lot of technology to help them adjust shifts. And become more engaged and take greater control of their own working life. So it's impressive to see how organizations are flexing from that perspective, and workforce are being engaged to a much higher degree than we've ever seen before.
No, that's a good point. Thank you. So let's shift gears a little bit. We've talked a lot about technology in itself. And if we think about any strategy, and as companies think about digital transformation, the center of all of it is people. And so I think we sometimes tend to miss the human side of things. And as customer experience leaders, they are critical to the success of any company. And so we speak a lot about the importance of empathy. I think the pandemic has really made that front and center as everybody's looking to do business, as companies are thinking about their strategy and how we interact with folks as well. There's a huge amount of sensitivity and understanding, and I'd say people are giving a lot more grace and permission to folks in really helping everybody connect across the board and being comfortable in their own environments. So how are we, if we look at that, when we think about how we actually work with our customers, how are we making sure that empathy is at the center of that approach? Sam, if you could help us start with this one.
Yeah, sure. I think, empathy for us has been a key word last year, I think, and for us, it definitely started internally. So first things first, everybody, the senior leadership team made sure that everybody had kind of the tools and everything that they could possibly need. I think the leaders at Twilio kind of knew the year that was ahead of us, because then what happened was we just had the busiest year we've ever had, helping our customers put their customers at the center of everything that they did. So video was a key one. Really quickly, I think video plus healthcare has been huge for us last year. As leaders in the healthcare industry, we're really starting to think about how they could not lose any of that bedside manner, but at the same time deliver the same services. And it's been incredibly successful and echoes kind of everything that Niall and everybody have said before about cloud adoption and digital adoption. I think that there have been other things as well that we've been helping our customers with, which is, again, thinking about the cognitive load, thinking about everything that's out there. How can we make security, for example, as simple as possible for people? How can we simplify the notifications, the contact strategy, all of these things, so people aren't bombarded all the time? I think empathy has been such a core word for us in all the kind of decisions and the way that we're helping our customers. But I think it extends beyond that as well, because I read once that compassion is empathy plus action. And I think, again, we're seeing a lot more compassion, grace, whatever you want to call it, Bhavana. I think we're all seeing that, and that can only be a good thing. And technology is supporting that. It's supporting us being able to go back to the same agent that we were dealing with before. Our platform is programmable, so we're seeing customers build things that absolutely meet their needs in order to service their customers in a very kind of caring, compassionate and empathic way. So yeah, I think we're seeing the two hand in hand. We're really seeing how technology can help drive more empathic, more compassionate conversations.
That's great. Thanks, Sam. Anyone else want to share anything that you all are doing within your companies around empathy? And I love that phrase, because we've been using empathy in action very intentionally around how we service our customers. And we've gone down a lot of that path of what you just talked about, Sam, which is how do we drive proximity? How do we build the right narrative, whether that's internal or for our customers? How do we create the right concept of hope and really helping them feel like they can get into that direction of where they needed to go? And then the actions associated to how do we get there, right? And so I love that you kind of call that out, because I think that's critical and foundational in really making things very tangible and actionable and showing up the right way for our customers, but at the same time enabling them as well. Anything else that anyone would like to share about the work that's being done? Julian, go ahead.
Well, actually, I love the fact that you started by saying that digital transformation was, first of all, about people. Because there is a shortcut I usually don't really like, which is CX equal EX. Employee experience is the same thing as customer experience, because it's really a shortcut that doesn't work that way. But that's like a prerequisite, meaning if you don't have proper employee experience, you're not going to have proper customer experience. One is not equal to the other, but one requires the other. And one of the things that I really love about 2020 is we've seen many companies actually, stand up and do great things about their employees. If I just think about RingCentral, we put so many programs in place internally to support employees, make sure they can work from home, make sure they get the equipment they have, make sure they get the psychological support they may need, and everything to make them, work in the best possible environment. And that turns into customer experience, because if you want your people to show empathy and to care about your customers, make sure they feel cared for in the first place, that incredibly important. And obviously that has had a second effect, which is empowerment. The beauty of work from home or work from anywhere is you can no longer have micromanagement from a manager standing above your shoulder, making sure you're doing everything at the right time and you don't spend too much time in the toilets. Either you trust your people or you can no longer manage them. And that's one of the few upside of 2020 is with helped people have more empathy, be more empowered, and care about their customers more, because that's just a natural way once you are in an environment that encourages this kind of behavior.
Julian, I love what you kind of called out, right? The critical component and the value of empowerment and trust go a long way from an employee standpoint in really enabling them to really excel in their jobs, right? That balance of what they need to feel like they are fully capable, and if they need help, they can get the help as needed, right?
Absolutely.
And I appreciate you kind of calling those pieces out. So a couple of things, if I could just kind of in closing, just to be really sensitive to time, if I could ask each of you, and I'll kind of go backwards from the way we did our introduction. So now I'll just give you a heads up. We'll start with you on this one. If you all could give one piece of advice to our customer experience leaders on something that you are intentionally working on yourself, and then two, that they need to be really thinking about as we all come out of this pandemic.
So starting with myself, I guess the main one for me is to be able to leverage data. I'm seeing organizations started to classify data as an important asset. So from a customer experience professional, think about that data as an asset. How can you leverage it? Life going forward is not going to be predictable or as nearly as predictable as it has been. To build out appropriate scenarios, use your data to help you build scenarios you can fall back on, have multiple scenarios, and be adept and agile at moving from one scenario onto another scenario as things start to change. So use your data to fall back on to help you build some confidence going forward. And we'll start driving value. Make sure that data drives that value. Look forward to hearing from success from customers and how they do that.
Thanks, Niall. Julian?
A single piece of advice would probably be know your audience. Get to know your customers, get to understand their pain points, get to understand their habits, their expectations, the way they communicate with others, and try as much as you can. You will never be able to please everyone, that's for sure, that's guaranteed, but at least you can please the larger portion of your customers and make sure you understand what they need, communicate with them on the right channels, engage with them at the right speed. All those elements that, you know, show that you understand them and care for them, that's the best path to future success.
Awesome. Thank you. Sam?
Yeah, Julian stole my thunder there, but I think for me, it would be really think about what it was you want to build. So there are possibilities now to build customer experience the way you want it to be to fit your company. So make sure that you're making some very deliberate design choices about what you want to build. So not just think that adding channels or adding technology will help, but be very, very deliberate about it and make sure, to Julian's point, that you are designing whatever tomorrow's world will be to fit in with what your customers really, really want and need.
Thanks, Sam. And Emma?
I think it would be, so don't necessarily think about these things in silos. Make sure that you kind of get across the organization to try and figure some of this stuff out, because obviously, CX covers a whole range of areas of the business. And I think, second to that, I would say, well, as important as that, I would say, think about automating the things that you can, so that then those agents can feel that empowerment and add the value to what they're doing. So those would be my two pieces of advice.
Well, thank you for that, Emma. So if I kind of sum up kind of what we've heard from this amazing panel in closing as well, is the importance of data, use it. Really think about listening and getting to know your customers. Be, show up and be empathetic. Be intentional about what you're building from a customer experience standpoint. And as Emma mentioned, that's critical, because I feel like you guys kind of teed it all up, is think about it as an end-to-end experience and not in the silos of how your company operates, because you really want to show up as one approach and you want to create that connected customer experience for your customers. And so again, thank you to this amazing panel. It's been fun hosting you all, and hopefully all of you listening in have gained a lot of insights. I did myself personally, being a part of the panel and hosting it. And so I want to thank you all for your time and enjoy the sessions as well. Thank you.